I'm really, I'm very appreciative of these kind of sessions, and particularly that you have focused on technology as well as environment and how it can go together. So I'll directly start sharing the presentation, if that's fine.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Great. Cool. Right. I hope the screen and the presentations are visible properly, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So I work closely on something called as data-driven decision making. So it is from that angle I'll be presenting it today. Of course, the title is more on ICT and environment, but from my point of view, how it works is that it is not just about the technology, but about how we use the technology and how are we working with it, right? So from that, I'll explain it. So about me, I'm working with WRI India, and I have a background in civil engineering and computer science, and remote sensing. So remote sensing and GIS. So I'll explain what it is. Don't worry about if you are not aware of what remote sensing is. So I work with an organization called WRI India, and what we do is actually it's a research organization. It's research to action actually. What it means is that we try to do cutting edge research, and then we try to take it to the government and get some kind of a progress in it, so that some kind of positive change comes on ground, right? So that is our idea. So we operate in many countries, and within that I work in a team called Geoanalytics, and our vision is very, very simple. So we are trying to make our cities better. Okay, so that is the concept. So how we are going to do is that we want to make sure that the city is taking the right decisions for whether it is for planning or governance. And it has to be economically competitive, environmentally sustainable, and equitable. Now, these three really matter for us. And how we are doing it, we are being supported by a lot of data analytics tools and models. Now, it is from this angle I'll be presenting. But before going into that, before going into the details of some of our works, I'll just explain the way we function. My team functions. So basically, we do a lot of remote sensing. I'll explain what it is if you're not aware of it. And we use a lot of GIS tools, and we use a lot of big data, and we use a lot of machine learning algorithms and stuff like that. And we basically try to build up, research and tools, and I specifically call it as prototype tools because we don't want it to be a final product, but we want it to be a product that the government can take it up and convert it into a product, right? So that they can use it. So from that perspective, I always call it as prototype tools and everything. And we create future scenarios, we create policies, and we also train folks. And what we are expecting is that we would be having some kind of a positive change on ground through integrated planning, informed decision making, and with improved transparency. And finally, we want as I said, like independent future replication. That is, with tomorrow I'll be there, tomorrow I won't be there, my organization will be there, might not be there, it's not sure, but the government will always be there, right? So there should be a replication that is done without us or without me in particular. So from that, this is how we work. My slide deck is also containing a lot of maps. So basically, we take a lot of data. On left side, you can see some of the maps. We take a lot of these data, compile it, create insights, and then we take it to the government and we interact with them. And we try to, with the insights that we have gathered, we try to make sure that everything is protected and for better pathways that the city can adopt. Now, what is remote sensing and GIS? Remote sensing is, this is a satellite image of Tamil Nadu like last year. And remote sensing is, as the word sounds, remote. You are, sitting or being somewhere else, and you're trying to sense what is happening in a faraway place, right? I mean, faraway place in the sense it can be your place, but you are not necessarily being there to see it, to see what's happening. It's more like a photograph kind of thing. But only thing is, in a normal photograph, you see only the red, green, and blue bands. But in a satellite images, we'll be seeing lots of other bands as well. So we gather lots of that information that is very, very critical for us. So typically these remote sensing images come from satellites, and some of them from aeroplanes and drones. The other is the geographical information system. So what it means, and so in the slide you can see on the right side there is a lot of some kind of a data, and everything has a geographical coordinate to it. So it matters a lot for us to know what is happening, where it is happening, and how it is happening, right? So this is not necessarily coming from geographical, coming from satellites. These could be your mobile data. It could be it could be any data that has been entered in the government directory or something like that. So in the right side, what you see is formal jobs in job locations in Bangalore. So of course you need these kind of data to plan your cities better. Now, with this in aspect, I'll just tell you how to design the researchers and everything around that, so that you achieve something towards the environment or whatever it is. There has to be some kind of a procedure. Now, for that, this is I'm off recently, particularly in 2021. I am always sharing this particular slide that talks about 4 key components of any kind of technological intervention, which is purpose, science, technology, and art. Now, these 4 are very, very, very critical. Now, a good majority of these tech solutions, tech revolutions that you see, majority of them don't conform to this. Now, that is my anger, and that is the reason why I'm presenting you this, because I want you to make sure that all these 4 are addressed when you are trying to prepare some kind of solution, a technology-based solution. Now, why do I say this? Is that the fact you need to address is purpose. Purpose, of course, it's very clear, but the word is clear for you, but you need to understand. The reason being is that majority of the tech-based solutions that I see out there, which they claim as they want to solve the world, they want to solve the world's problems through mobile phones and technology and smartphones or smart apps or whatever it is. I'm hearing a lot through that. But what they are missing out is that, usually what happens is that they don't address the concept of purpose. Why are we doing it? Will this be the best solution, or will it solve it? So this can be anything with respect to, say, for example, I remember during COVID times, they had asked Aadhaar card to supply food for poor communities, and they were asking for Aadhaar. And they said an app will be developed where you can enter this number and you'll get a OTP. And so the thing is, you're just complicating the problem by adding technology. So that shouldn't be there. The purpose is, if the purpose is about solving a certain issue, we have to directly concentrate on solving that issue. And technology should be applied where we are not able to find other solutions. Now, that is how it has to be. So for me, purpose is very, very, very critical. And without purpose, whatever you are going to do is going to be junk. And so you need to clearly understand who is your user base, what is the kind of benefit. As I mentioned earlier, that you have to be economically, city and governments and everything has to be economically, environmentally sustainable, economically competitive, as well as equitable. So you have to make sure that none of your technologies are leaving out anybody. None of your technologies are affecting any kind of a progress. Now, overuse of technology is always a problem. So you have to, it's a problem not from the sense of machinizing, but is a problem from waste of money, waste of resources, and leaving out people. So you have to be very careful about where it has to be. A good researcher will know where to apply it, and that is why the purpose becomes very important. Without purpose, whatever you are going to do is useless, and without science, the entire thing is just however way you have designed it, it doesn't work. And if without technology, it might, only thing is that technology will provide us the speed and the ability to do it in a large scale. And without it, we will not be able to complete it, but it is not the most critical part. And the fourth one, which I used to be very, not very, when I was studying at least, I never concentrated on art, but of recently I have understood that the better you communicate your messages through your whatever technology that you have for a project, only when you convey it better, it gets the right use and everything. Now I'll explain from that, from my work, how these are getting applied. Right. So, for example, one environmental problem that I wanted to work on is on urban heat. Now, this map that you see over here is that the map you see over here is surface temperature that is based on how hot a body is. Now, if you have watched the movie Predator or somewhere, you might have noticed how the thermal infrared sensors works and everything, right? So it is the same application, nothing more than that. And using that, we wanted to figure out which are the hotspots in the city, and then we can plan interventions accordingly. Now, so this is one map of Bangalore showing which are the hotspots and which are the, in a particular time. And similarly, we began tracking out for the entire city and for many other cities as well. And then we began, so as I said, like the purpose now is to find out heat related impact, right? So I'm targeting it very clearly. Then I go to the next step of finding associated information to add more insights and value to it. And using the same satellite images, I try to figure out, this is Mumbai. What I'm doing is trying to figure out the vegetation. And now I'm correlating in the chart over, you can see like how surface temperature and vegetation are correlating. Now with these satellite images, now what we are doing is we are identifying the road stretches which are pretty hot, where we can plant trees or other interventions. We are trying to figure out communities that are poorer communities in particular, which are, where the rooftop is a problem, and we are trying to identify them so that we can provide solutions to roofing. Better roofing structures and things like that. So that we are doing. So this is how I start with the purpose. Now the science has to be there, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but you have to understand that a lot of data that we get in India or have quality issues and or deficit. Just because you got data doesn't mean that you should start using it. You need to understand it very, very critically, whether it is able to explain everything that we are seeing, whether it is, so usually, for example, a person, shared us some data of water quality, something related, and we just noticed that in another place, data was not collected. And they were saying it is cleaner because it is not showing anything bad. And I was like, it is not, the truth is not that one area is bad than other area, but the fact was we were not collecting data. So you have to be very careful about the data oriented stuffs and the methodologies. Now, here is the second advice. I'm sorry, I'm going to give you a lot of yarn, but not much of projects, but the first one is very, very critical. A cool methodology doesn't mean a useful one. You have to always realize that. We have to always work on useful projects and then figure out methodology. Methodology can be cooler or whatever. But the thing is, everyone starts from cool methodology and then they'll be trying to find solutions. So every week I'm getting a meeting, and this has been increasing over the last 5 years. Okay. So what is happening is that somebody, some organization, some individual researcher, some academic researcher, they'll always come to us and they'll say that, we have prepared some data. We thought it would be useful for some purpose. And when I look at it, many of them are not useful ones. Okay. So what happens is that they started by thinking from the technology front and technology or methodology front, machine learning. If I put the word machine learning, everyone will be attracted. And if I put some kind of a some kind of 5 sensors I'm going to put and I'm going to collect data. Everyone will be attracted to it. Not understanding whether it will be useful to address the research question or the problem that we are facing. So from that, it is very critical that the user point of view is more important than any of these statistics that we do, etc. And hence also which I had iterated before, but it depends on resource efficiency and reproducibility, right? What it means is that I shouldn't be bringing out a form of technology that is going to cost us millions and tell a small town saying that you do this so that you will get a better result or something. The thing is, you have to be very careful about such kind of problems, right? So you need to understand how resource would be managed and how efficient you could be. Now the next part is technology. As I said, that don't get don't love a particular technology too much and don't focus on such things only. So this is a favorite quote. I keep it in some of my presentations. If all you have as a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That is, you figured out some kind of a tool or a methodology, and you'll try to find an application for it, right? So not every place hammer will be required. Only in certain cases hammer will be required. But just because you know how to use hammer, you shouldn't treat everything with nail. Treat everything as if it is a nail. So it is the same thing, and you have to be very flexible about the tool choices and methodology choices, etc., etc. Now I have listed down. So for me, actually, this is a vegetation map of India, by the way. This was not any big program. This is Excel, by the way. So you can even do lots of analytics, lots of things with the least, from places where you might not even expect that it can be done. The reason I'm saying is that you shouldn't be following into that. Now, I'm not going to focus too much on art and communication, but you need to fancify your work through some kind of coloring schemes and everything. I'm not going to focus on that. But recently, I've understood that government officers and general public will understand or will get attracted to an idea only if it is visualized and only if the story is told in a proper way. I believe in storytelling, and I believe in a concept which is long-term storytelling, medium-term storytelling, etc., etc. I take a lot of influences from the mainstream mass entertainment media, as well as pro wrestling and stuff like that. And for me, that storytelling is very, very important, and to convey the message that we have. Now, from that, I'll go into the applications that we are using, some of the applications that we are using. I don't have much time, so I will not, beat the same bush. But as I said, I use a lot of remote sensing. Here is one case where I'm using it for studying water bodies in Bangalore and how they have been changing over time. Now, the biggest cause of this loss is actually overexploitation. In the sense, like, these are not like encroached or something. It is just that they are overusing the water, that the water is not there anymore. And we wanted to figure out how much area and which are the areas that are being troubled. So in the map, you can see that these are the areas that are losing water. And the same way we are trying to monitor urbanization. Now, as I said, water is one critical aspect. The other is figuring out where is the city growing is very, very important. And so in the left side, you can see a sequence of satellite images, processed satellite images, and you can see how the built up has been growing over time and everything. All these are results of machine learning products. And this is not just those one city, Bangalore or something. We have done this for the entire country also. And similarly, and it is not just finding out where the city is going through satellite images. We also try to find out what type of growth is there in the cities, and there are many different types of growth actually with respect to how, like, where it is growing, etc. Whether it is just a highway cost growth, or whether the city is just expanding in its boundaries, or whether a huge project has been, infrastructure project has been put out, and so many things are there. And sometimes one city is growing, just because of that, a small town next to it also will be growing. So those kind of things and all, we use satellite images to understand, and we built a lot of machine learning products. I'm not, as I said, I'm not going to go into the details of the methodology, but we try to figure out for the entire country that way, like what is spurring that growth. And this is very critical for us because from a planning point of view, from the environmental point of view, it is very critical. And in, for example, the last, if you're aware of news, last floods in Chennai, I think I wrote some multiple articles, and this data was very, very critical for arriving at the insights related to the floods, about talking about where is the city growing and how it is growing in the topographies that it shouldn't be growing, kind of thing. So that kind of inputs, it was not available before, but now we are having those kind of things. Now, once we understand that, we also start predicting it. And this is for Delhi, by the way, like how the city grew in the last, how the city might grow in the future if certain criteria are set, etc. So we adjust the model parameters as required, etc., etc. Based on market conditions, based on certain aspects of demand or new infrastructure, if they are in place, what will happen, etc. So these kind of models also we prepare, and this is very critical because the next development that you're going to have, that is going to happen in a floodplain or any other thing, will affect the water availability within the city, as well as disasters like flood, and heat is also another problem. The other is actually one of my favorites is working on floods. So a lot of floodplains in India have been being converted, and since floodplains are being converted, we are facing a lot of issues. So we began working on modeling how water, we began simulating water flow, and we use a lot of ground data, as well as we use satellite based topography data to find out how much inundation happens and how the water moves around. And we also do a lot of verification. So this is Kabini River in Karnataka. And same way, I mean, if we try to apply it in an urban scenario, within urban scenario also, we need, as I said, like the base data is coming from a lot of resources. So for us, using satellite images, using ground data, using property tax data, we began building all these complex, trying to recreate the entire environment in our computer so that we can simulate and we can understand what is going on. Right. So we are creating a virtual city in our virtual city in our computers. That's what we are doing. So you can see this is the topography map of Mumbai. Similarly, we have how public transport moves in the city. We have carefully modeled it. Private transport, we are working on it. So we are trying to use Google Maps traffic information, phone location information, and crowding information, etc. We are and also video cameras and everything. We are trying to figure out the entire movement of the city as well as the way the city is. In one application, we are using it for flood, flow, etc. So you can see some of the simulations for one of the pilot areas in Mumbai. How water flows and at what time it flows based on the rainfall scenarios that we provide, so that before the flood itself we can be prepared. And that is what we are doing in one of them. So it's a zoomed in version of the same. So you can see how the water and the rivulets form and where is it going and everything. We are applying that to we have also marked a lot of drains that were available, stormwater drains, and we were trying to figure out whether these stormwater drains are running in full capacity or whether they will be able to convey the water that they have to. And using that, I mean, this map actually shows some of the stormwater drains that were running in full capacities. So this is one of the applications. So beyond the applications, what we do is also we do a lot of scenario building. Now, as I said, like the scenario building is very critical. Say, for example, it is not just about telling what place is going to be affected or what place would be affected, but how do we integrate it in a planning process, right? So for that to be answered, what we do is we build, as I said, simulations, but simulations with interventions that we want to do. So for example, in the left side map, what you see is that I proposed a solution of a new drain. This is just a sample case. It's not what we wanted, but it is a demonstration one. So we are actively working with the government on this right now. So if a new drain is built, what are the areas that that would have reduced the flood risk, and what are the areas that would have increased? There will be positive effect and a negative effect of any kind of intervention that we are going to make, right? So from that perspective, so you can see in the right side map, the areas in the green are places which have reduced risk. So this is one way to look at things, so that you would not be looking at flood at the time it happens, or intervention as it goes, or some kind of a solution just because it's being proposed. But what we do is that we try to find the best way out of it even before we start it. I mean, you are going to spend crores of money into building all these things. Why don't you do it in the computer side itself, right? So you don't have to go into a real world. Before that, you can simulate it in the virtual world. So you can see some of the risks that we do. So where we predicted, and this was this incident is from this year actually. So you can see how flooding is happening in the places where we are predicting it. And it is not just the kind of satellite images and everything. As I said, unfortunately, my presentation is actually very short, and I wanted to keep it very simple. But it's to be honest, at least in the last 7 years of WRI work that I've been doing, it is very difficult to summarize that into 30 minutes. But here you can see a lot of ways we are using data, right? So on the left side top, satellite, and we are trying to figure out areas that are in areas, as well as how much water is not going into the soil because of conversion into concrete and tar, right? Concrete and tar means water won't flow. And with satellite images, we are trying to figure out where that kind of problem is existing. On the right side top, what you see is locations marked in Mumbai, where we had digitized the locations of every traffic, every accident, and we try to find out analysis related to what is causing it and which are the intersections that are severely affecting it, etc. That is on the right side. In the left side bottom, what you see is all the job locations. Like we mapped around 15 lakh job locations in the city of Bangalore. We connected a lot of databases and everything. And then we began understanding what is how many of them are having access to metro. Metro will be successful only if you are able to commute, right? Like, I mean, if the metro has to ply, in the sense, like, you have to, first you have to go to the metro. So then your job location has to be accessible to it. And we are trying to find out, and so that we can find the optimal solution for if people are not using metro, then why are they not using metro, and how do you make them use metro, kind of thing. That kind of an analysis. And on the right side, what you have is the based on traffic information and flow, how much for a particular project. Say, for example, this was Pharma City and everything. So if you want to focus on access to that city, to a newly building city within the overall regional context, we need to figure out traffic flow and how much time it takes to reach, etc., etc., and what kind of infrastructure would be helpful for it, or that kind of. So from these aspects, we do a lot of research. As I said, like water, we focus on water. I didn't add maps on air pollution over here, but what the issues that we focus include water, any form of vegetation change, any form of temperature changes. Currently, we are working on climate action plans for the city of Mumbai and Bangalore, and everywhere we are bringing in all of this data so that a city can take, first is the city has to count the problems that it has, and we are focusing on that, counting the problems, so that through these data analytics, so that we can come to insights and then finally propose a path to solve that issue. And our motto has always been like, count it, change it, and scale it. And this is from that angle. And with this, I'll finish my short presentation. I took 30 minutes, I guess. If you have any questions, you can ask. If you want to know what kind of satellite images to use or any form of geographical information and how it can be applied for, if you have a specific environmental problem also, I can talk about it and how I didn't put everything over here in a presentation. It makes it too complex. I'm so sorry for that, but please do ask your questions.
We have 5 minutes for questions. Participants, if you have any questions, please ask. You can raise your hand or put the questions on the chat.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hello, sir. Very nice. It was like when I follow a lot of sustainable transportation and all. So I've been following WRI since long. This is not related to the IGF Youth Government, but I will only tell you one question which I have. Does the electric vehicle solve the complete pollution problem?
Okay, this is a complex question. Now, I'm not the EV guy, but I'll say it from here, how it works. So EV can address it, provided the source of energy is also clean, right? The thing is, locally, it will reduce the pollution in the sense you don't have much of CO2 pollution or something like that. That kind of pollution locally it will. But where is this electricity coming from, right? That matters. Now, if your country is completely dependent on coal power, then the overall pollution will still increase. It's not, not increase, but it will be somewhat the same. So, of course, the efficiency matters, but overall it will remain the same. But if the transition is done in the source side also, then there might not be that many problems. That is my short answer. I'm not an EV guy, by the way. I mean, I'm not the guy who is working on EV. At the max, I provide solutions for placing their best, placing charging stations. Identify locations.
Thank you.
I hope that answers.
Yeah, quite well. And one more question: where did that 3D terrain image came from? Was it designed on a Blender or a 3D software, or it was using the satellite images or something? The 3D terrain of Mumbai.
The data is a complex mix. It comes from satellite images.
Mm-hmm.
It comes from, as I mentioned over there, I think it comes from ground information, a lot of government data, etc. So roughly, I think there is like 2 million points that we had mapped, and from that it is coming, and combined with say satellite images. So it's not standing alone, and based on the reporting that has been done, and so from that we have calculated. Sometimes where we have issues, what we do is we take satellite images. Sometimes satellite manually we correct it. It's a painful job sometimes. The thing is you see from an angle, if you see the satellite, if you see a building, you will be able to count the number of windows, right? So from that also we calculate, and otherwise we use ortho images and stereo pairs and everything to calculate it.
Thank you so much, sir.
Deven, you can go ahead.
Yes. So hi. So I've been also into data analytics and stuff, and while making such model, it is always tricky to clean the data and also coming up with an effective metric to basically evaluate exactly what we want to. So any tips for this? Like right now I'm doing basically learning cohort analysis. So I've been coming up from that background.
Right, now this is a very complex question, and it's a very useful question. I think I tried to put it in my slide deck a little bit, but see, there is no single pathway to answer this. Okay, so the first thing that I want everyone to understand is that there is, however we try to create it, data always will have a gap, right? So if, for example, the population data of India, you can't be sure of it. All right, so there will be people who are left out, people who are whatever might have happened during the census, this, that, etc., etc. There are so many issues that come out of it. Now, I mean, it's not just the population data. I'm saying that every type of data that we are facing, every type of data that we are having will have such issues. Now, there are certain things that we need to understand over here. Statistical tests can help you a little bit, but it will be always limited within that limitation, right? So in the sense, you can understand the distribution of the data, you can understand how it is varying from one place to another, and you can identify outliers. You can always do such analysis to understand it a little bit more, to figure out how clean it is or how noisy it is, and you know, any form of kernel densities or those kind of things, you can always do it. But that will not be sufficient for you. You have to always know the ground a lot more. What do I mean by that is that, let's say, for example, you want to study poverty or whatever it is, like the other water quality data that I was mentioning. Data might come to you and you might be doing statistical analysis with it, but they might not represent the reality on ground, right? So how I usually start is, once I get a data set, I try to figure out how many ways that the data can go wrong, right? Whether it is collection procedure related issue, or whether it is a whether it is a form of a social inclusion part of things. For example, this mobile based data, sometimes I have problems because I don't use it because you don't have smartphone penetration across the country, right? So in cities like Bangalore, you'll have, of course, have many people, almost a good majority will have smartphones, and you can use it as a good proxy. But in other places, you would not. So you need to understand your ground. You need to understand whether your data is likely to be likely to answer the questions that you want to. And my way is always to think about how many ways can it go wrong. Now, if you think from that angle, you will start to figure out, you can list down what are the problems that you might face, like whether it is quality issue or whether this issue, that issue. And then certain things only you can find out using statistical methods. In other ways, you have to understand the ground. I do not know if there is any proper objective method to go about it. As I said, like only a certain sections will be answered by objective methods, but for me, when I get data, I start looking at the geography of it, trying to figure out what is happening, why is this coming here, why is it not coming here? Is it just because of whether the data is not available, or whether the people itself are not interested, or those kind of things? It's a very complex question. Unless the problem that you're trying to answer and the methodology and the data are listed, I will not be able to answer it. So
thank you. That was very insightful. And any tips for someone who is getting into it, maybe data analytics is using Python, or some resources you like to recommend to go into depths of this?
I don't prefer anything in particular. I think I mentioned that in the presentation. Don't get attached to any particular software, but be flexible as it goes. Tools can be always changed, but methodology has to be intact, but tools can always be changed. But I love Python, by the way. So I prefer using Python a lot. And I mix it a lot with R, because some of the statistical methods are not available in open Python libraries. I'm so sorry. So sometimes I go with R, and I try to bridge them also using RPy and everything. So you can go with Python and R a little bit, but Python. I mean, for programmatic things. If you want a visualization or something like that, you can always work on other. Actually, that Mumbai terrain, I visualized it using an open source software that nobody had ever heard of at that time. But it worked. I mean, so yeah. Any other questions?
So which software was it? Mumbai Terrain? Open?
No, visualization. The visualization was a simple software, very simple software. It's called Arial-Odd. It's unheard of. Arial-Odd. It's what it does is just takes a black and white, gray shade image, and based, if it is black color, they portray as depth, and white color means it will elevate. So I converted the entire data set that we had into a black and white image, and I projected it using that software, and it took just a minute to use, convert it into a 3D visualization. But unfortunately, it can render only in one color. So that's why you can see that it is in gray shade. But other softwares are really complex. They can do it, but they will take a lot of time to render. It might ray shader, for example, R has this ray shader library, and QGIS has a plugin and everything, but they take a lot of time.
Thank you.
Sir, I don't think we have any other questions. Yeah. So we'll conclude this session. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on a Sunday for an interactive classroom session. And also thank you so much. We are happy to have you for 2 consecutive years.